It was here on this quiet residential street in Southport where the innocence of a children's dance class was shattered in the most horrific way. An attack on some of society's most vulnerable that had ramifications way beyond this Merseyside town and proved to be the most consequential story of the year.
Breaking news at 1:08. We're hearing reports from Southport that emergency services are responding to a major incident on Hart Street.
We can confirm that emergency services are in Southport following a major incident. It seems a mass stabbing attack. Multiple casualties. There are several reports indicating that this was some kind of preschool premises in Hart Street. Throughout that July day, the truly appalling nature of this story unfolded. An attack on a Taylor Swift-themed dance class for primary school children. What should have been a safe space for youngsters became the most hellish nightmare.
We heard from Merseyside police that a 17-year-old from the Banks area was arrested.
As far as we know, he entered the premises and began to attack.
It's just one of them things we will never forget.
6-year-old BB King and 7-year-old Elsie Stancombe died at the scene. 9-year-old Alice da Silva Aguia died in hospital the next day. 8 other children were injured, along with 2 adults who desperately tried to shield the youngsters from attack.
Who witnessed the attack, who witnessed afterwards, have described it as something like out of a horror movie.
Children being pulled out of buildings with all sorts of terrible things having happened to them.
As news of the stabbing attack spread throughout this community, there was understandable shock and trauma. That shock turned to anger and then disorder.
What we've seen over the last 2 days is an outpouring of grief. This is the other side of it. This is an outpouring of anger.
In the days that followed, protests and violent disorder spread to multiple communities across England and even Northern Ireland. Some of the anger was fueled by social media reports about the identity and motivation of the alleged attacker. And although claims the suspect was an asylum seeker later turned out to be inaccurate, the protests were consumed with rage about illegal and uncontrolled migration. In response, the government and policing leaders claimed the protests had been hijacked by the far right.
In the aftermath of this attack, the community of Southport had to suffer twice. A gang of thugs got on trains and buses, went to a community that is not their own, a community grieving the most horrific tragedy, and then proceeded to throw bricks at police officers who just 24 hours earlier had been having to deal with an attack on children in their community. And we must have a policing response that can do the same.
In the weeks that followed the disorder, hundreds of people accused of either direct involvement or of stoking tensions online were put before the courts in a swift legal process that saw many jailed. Here at this court in Liverpool and in many courtrooms right across the country, conviction after conviction mainly involved local people from the areas where trouble flared. Very few cases seem to support the Prime Minister's assertion of travelling far-right thugs. Undoubtedly, some far-right elements did seek to capitalise on the unrest. But the vast majority of those that took to the streets during a week of disorder were from local communities, where anger and resentment over issues like immigration have been building for years. 18-year-old Axel Rudukabana will face trial early in the new year, charged with the murder of 3 young girls and the attempted murders of 8 other children and 2 adults. He also faces a terror charge of possessing a document related to Al-Qaeda and a further count of producing the biological toxin ricin after police say a quantity of the deadly poison was found in a search of his home. After a week of widespread disorder, the anger and the violence gave way to an uneasy calm. Community volunteers took to the streets to tidy up the debris and help with repairs. Although outwardly things appear to have returned to normal, the underlying tensions remain over what many see as societal decay, exacerbated by uncontrolled migration. The most visible manifestation of the migrant crisis plays out almost daily along the coast of northern France. It is, of course, dwarfed by legal migration, which increased by almost 1 million in the last year. But the small boats provoke fierce debate and anger among many who feel migrants are taking advantage of poor border security and are gaming the asylum system.
GBNews Home and Security Editor Mark White is in Dover on the scene for us. Mark, an astounding figure.
Yeah, it's important. It's a milestone figure, and we've reached 10,036 to be precise, a whole month earlier than we did at this point last year. At this point last year, we were just at 7,600 on the really calm days, up to 1,000 coming across on a single day. The new Labour government found out very quickly just how incredibly difficult stopping the small boats will be. By October, the numbers making it to UK waters since the beginning of the year passed the almost 29,500 who arrived during the whole of the previous year. But seemingly undeterred, Sir Keir Starmer continued to insist Labour's policy of smashing the criminal gangs would work.
Today, a man suspected of being a significant supplier of small boat equipment has been arrested. Our approach of working with international partners to smash the people smuggling gangs is bearing fruit.
The government announced what it said were several significant operations to arrest key people smugglers and disrupt their small boat supplies. But these supply lines are well established and robust, even though the boats themselves and safety equipment are anything but. GBNews was shown back in April how people smugglers care little for the well-being of their human cargo.
Just show you an example of that. And that's probably not just for a child, they'll probably give that to an adult as well, saying that's going to save you. Another example, just back here, is an inner tube. We quite often see them, or they're handed out in a packet. So basically, if you panic, inflate one of those yourself.
Stopping these boats is made all the more difficult by the transnational nature of this criminal enterprise, with many of the source countries where the migrants originate either unable or unwilling to help UK authorities. The former head of Border Force told GBNews in August that smashing the gangs would be next to impossible without full cooperation from many other countries.
It is a very, very big ask, I think, to expect the UK to be able to smash the gangs, if you like, without some form of international collaboration where powers can be used by other countries on their jurisdictions to bring people to justice and to prevent people and goods crossing borders, etc., rather than the UK being able to do this on their own.
Coming up, 2024 has been a tumultuous year for the UK's state broadcaster, embroiled in a number of deeply damaging scandals.